We are hours away from President Trump's response to Iran's missile attack on 2 military bases last night. Iran's supreme leader is warning that more retaliation attacks from Tehran could be imminent. Katherine Johnson has more from Washington.
The 2 bases hit have been on high alert in recent days, with indications that Iran was planning to strike. Last night, the president met with top defense officials at the White House to try to discuss a strategy on how the U.S. might respond.
Iran launched more than a dozen missiles overnight, aimed at 2 Iraqi bases housing U.S. troops. Iranian state TV said it was revenge for last week's killing of General Qasem Soleimani. He was buried hours after the attack, following a massive multi-city funeral procession filled with anti-American statements. One base targeted was in Erbil, in northern Iraq.
After that, we also heard helicopters in the sky. And just a little while ago, we also heard a fighter jet overhead.
The other was at Al Asad Air Base, home to about 1,500 personnel.
We're prepared to attack if we have to.
Earlier in the day, President Trump sent a warning to Iran.
If Iran does anything that they shouldn't be doing, they're going to be suffering the consequences.
But after the attacks, the president tweeted, "All is well," and so far, so good. Iran's foreign minister also reacted on social media, saying, quote, "Iran took and concluded proportionate measures in self-defense, and they do not seek escalation or war."
It's very simple what we want from Iran. Stop trying to kill us.
Some U.S. lawmakers hope both sides show restraint.
This could spiral out of control very, very quickly.
As do many Iranian Americans.
I feel for the troops that are going there right now. I feel for their families. I feel that both sides, the people, the public, they don't want to have any war.
Iranian state TV says Iran has 100 other targets if the U.S. responds.
The Secret Service has beefed up its presence at the White House as we wait for the president's statement this morning on the attacks. And we also expect this to be the opening topic on Capitol Hill when the Senate convenes at 10 a.m. Anne-Marie.
All right, thank you, Catherine. Mike Morell joins me now from Washington. Mike is a CBS News, a senior national security contributor and former acting and deputy CIA director. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Mike.
Good morning, Anne-Marie.
Good morning. I was really looking forward to talking to you to get your insight here. So first off, when you heard about the attacks on the 2 bases in Iraq, your first reaction?
So my first reaction was I was a little surprised that they did a direct military attack from Iran on the United States because of the risk associated with it. Right? Had they killed an American, it would have been very difficult for President Trump not to have responded in force by attacking sites in Iran. And that would have taken us to the risk of war, actually would have taken us to war. So I was a bit surprised. But when I saw how limited the strike was, a relatively small number of missiles, no casualties, it suggested to me that the Iranians may be sending a signal here that, look, we have to respond, but we did a proportionate response. We don't want to escalate this. We want this to be, at least in the overt war, perhaps our last shot for now.
So I found it interesting that you just said there, at least in the overt war, because prior to this, the debate was whether or not they were going to use one of their proxies, militia in another country that would have access to American assets, if you will. It's significant that they did not do that, that these are rocket launches that came from Iran.
Yes, I think you have to put this into 2 buckets. The overt war, which is us killing Qasem Soleimani, taking responsibility, and them now firing back from Iran, taking responsibility. That's the overt war. Hopefully that can de-escalate now. But that doesn't mean the covert war is over. In fact, I think there are 2 things we need to think about here. One is, still down the road at some point, an assassination of a senior U.S. official somewhere in the world, it could be months from now, to get revenge. And then 2, we still have to worry about those Iranian proxies. They may still attack U.S. military bases. We've seen some rocket attacks since Soleimani was killed. And we have to remember, Anne-Marie, that Iran has some control over these proxies, but not complete control. So even though Iran may not want them to attack U.S. bases, they could still do that, and they could still drag us towards a war.
Right. So you wrote a really interesting article that was posted on The Hill, I think in the summertime, and you almost mapped out, it's sort of uncanny, mapped out exactly what we're seeing unfold right now, how things could lead to war with Iran. You know, the details are not exactly the same, but the steps certainly are. You mentioned that you were initially surprised when you heard about the attack on the base, but then you could see that it was definitely a measured attack. Is there anything else that has sort of surprised you about how this has unfolded, whether it's on the Iranian side, the Iraqi side, or the U.S. side?
Not really. The one issue, Anne-Marie, that nobody is really talking about is the Iranian decision to remove the restrictions on the enrichment of uranium, the restrictions that were put on it by the nuclear deal. And the reason that's important is because Iran will very quickly get back to a level of enriched uranium that so concerned Israel that Israel back in 2011 thought about striking Iranian nuclear sites. So that's a variable here that nobody thinks about. And if you're sitting in Tel Aviv, that is the #1 issue. So the removal of those restrictions brings Israel into this equation in a way that not a lot of people are thinking about or talking about.
So both the U.S. and Iran say they do not want escalation. They do not want war. The president has said that really what he wants is a renegotiation of the nuclear deal, and he wants Iran to sort of step back from its meddling, if you will, in various countries in the Middle East. Iran has been, many have said, trying to isolate the U.S. since it removed the U.S. from the nuclear deal. With these moves that you're seeing, do you see any movement towards what either side wants? I mean, is the U.S. becoming increasingly more isolated? Is Iran moving closer to renegotiating the nuclear deal?
So ironically, I think maybe we have a little bit of an opportunity here. If the Iranians say to their people, we hit back hard, we hit back directly, we killed Americans, you know, we're now even. And if the president says to the American people, they took a shot at us, they weren't effective, we defended ourselves, there were no casualties, then we can de-escalate this. And then in diplomatic channels, through an intermediary, maybe we can start having a conversation, Iran, around the following kind of narrative. We came very close to war with you. Maybe it's time that we sit down and have a conversation about the future relationship between our two countries. Maybe we can get the negotiations started that the president has been pushing for. So it's a long shot, but the fact that we've gone through this and the fact that Iran did its measured response, we'll see what the president does in response to the response, but we may have an opportunity here that we didn't have 2 weeks ago.
Well, let's hope you are correct, Mike. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.